Hello, my name's Clare Murray and I'm managing partner of CM Murray Specialist Employment and Partnership Lawyers. And I'm joined today by my partner, Andrew Pavlovic, who is our specialist regulatory and professional discipline partner within the firm. Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Now, we are going to have a chat today in one of our 10-minute talk series about the SRA consultation on its rule changes on health and well-being at work. I wonder, Andrew, if you could just summarise for us briefly the rule changes that the SRA are proposing and why they're significant.
So the rule that we're looking at in this talk is in relation to a proposed new rule on treatment of colleagues. And the precise wording is to introduce a rule that says that individuals shall treat colleagues fairly and with respect. They shouldn't bully or harass them or discriminate unfairly against them. And then importantly, they should challenge behaviour that does not meet that standard. And this arises following the recent guidance on workplace environments that was released in February, which talked about toxic work environments and how that can lead to regulatory misconduct. So we've had a lot of cases where individuals have committed misconduct, where they have made a mistake and concealed it. And then when they've appeared in the tribunal, they've spoken about working in toxic work cultures where they haven't felt supported, adequately supervised, where they've raised concerns about workloads, those haven't been addressed properly. So this follows on from that guidance, and it's intended to introduce an express requirement to treat others fairly, but also to encourage that sort of speak up culture, not just in relation to any bad conduct that you might be experiencing yourself, but also conduct that you see other people undergoing.
It's really significant in that and it's incredibly well intentioned. And in line with sort of thinking in sexual harassment as well, that you need to sort of lift the burden from the victim and encourage the people around who see it but can sometimes be quite passive and go, oh, this isn't down to me. It's to get those people to actually step forward, because there is a whole body of academic work about how bystanders not speaking up can actually reinforce the behaviours and normalise them and make the victim question as to whether or not something has actually happened to them that's unfair or unlawful. So you can see it's incredibly well intentioned, and also, I guess, in line with the government has been consulting and last year proposed to bring in a new mandatory duty on employers to take proactive steps to prevent sexual harassment. So it's kind of in line with that, although it goes even further because it's actually imposing an obligation not just on employers as an entity, as a body, but actually on the bystander. And so what are the potential consequences, not just for the firm, but for individuals if they fall short of these proposed changes?
I think that's the concern, putting the onus on the individual to challenge behaviour. The issue there could be that a failure to challenge the behaviour could itself be a breach of the rule and could result in regulatory action. I mean, obviously, how that would imply in practice, only time would tell. But certainly, I think there would be a concern, someone who's observing behaviour that they don't like or seeing a colleague being treated in a particularly bad way. They may themselves be thinking, okay, well, if I don't challenge this, am I myself going to be the subject of regulatory action? And that could actually increase the concern and the stress that they might be feeling about the situation. I mean, there is obviously already an obligation on solicitors to report to the SRA where they have a reasonable belief that someone has committed a serious breach of the relevant regulatory arrangements. So there's already that self-reporting obligation there. And in sexual harassment and discrimination cases, the SRA have said they're happy for those reports to be made directly to the SRA rather than the usual course, which is to report them to the compliance officer for legal practice. So the question then is this necessary? And does it just in fact increase the regulatory burden and require individuals to stay awake at night wondering whether they have to, from a regulatory perspective rather than an ethical or a moral perspective, challenge behaviour? I spoke with Beth about speak up culture as part of the cultural review, and we spoke about the particular challenges that law firms face in cultivating that culture, because often they are quite hierarchical, and for junior solicitors, how realistic is it that they would challenge a behaviour of a partner, for example? And the consultation does recognise that it may be more difficult for junior solicitors to challenge behaviour, and it has said that if this rule does come in, they will put out new guidance on what they would expect from different people, and also an enforcement strategy indicating the sort of cases where they may take action. And the idea is to empower people to challenge behaviour, but it's just whether or not it does that, or whether it actually just makes it more stressful.
It's going to be important for both the firm and both the SRA and the relevant firms to give very clear guidance. So it's kind of, you need at an SRA level clear guidance as to what they potentially regard falls within this type of behaviour that would trigger regulatory reporting, etc., and intervention. But also for firms to make sure that their policies are up to date, that they've got effective training, that that people understand, again, what falls within the ambit of potentially triggering these rules. Yes, that they have effective speak up culture and understanding the routes through which they can do that. I know there's been a lot of good work done in a number of firms about having sort of speak up advocates, at different levels, so people feel that they can report in different ways. Also, I think that a while ago, I know there was one firm, I think it was Travis Smith, who did some training where at all levels about being able to speak up and intervene by saying that something, that's not cool. Like, it's not cool. I know there was a bit of mirth around it, but actually the principle is right. It really is encouraging people to step forward, whether you've got the stick of regulation behind you or not. I do think there's a risk that what they're proposing actually is going beyond current employment and equality laws, and even proposed laws, as I say, that the mandatory duty being proposed by the government, that they're for employers to prevent harassment. So there is a possibility that the SRA are actually going even further beyond that, maybe rightly or wrongly, I don't know. I think they will create an additional burden for themselves that perhaps they may struggle to resource, and they could end up becoming like a parallel dispute jurisdiction to the Employment Tribunal. Having said all of that, it is a very thoughtful issue that they're addressing, and a very positive and sensible one that they're raising. It's just how you go about, and is the regulatory stick at this stage on individuals the right way to do it? I don't know if you think that there's like a midway point along the journey that can kind of encourage people to be positive bystanders and give them support without necessarily saying, and if you don't, you're potentially going to lose your whole career.
Yeah, and I think the rules changes proposed to both individuals and firms. So the obligation on the individual is to treat colleagues with respect, whereas the obligation on the firm is to cultivate that atmosphere and to ensure that managers and employees treat others with respect, and also to ensure that behaviour is called out. So arguably you could say, well, you could keep that obligation to ensure people speak out, or to create that culture where people can speak out and challenge behaviour on the firm, but not have it in the individual code. That could be a compromise position. So the obligation on the individual would still be to treat employees fairly, not harass or discriminate, but you would remove the obligation to challenge behaviour, but maintain that obligation in the rule change for the firms.
But then for the firms perhaps to introduce their own internal bystander policies, where
Yes.
they make it their expectation that people of all levels will intervene, and then to show them within the context of their organisation how to do it safely. Are there any final sort of thoughts or suggestions, whether it's for firms or partners who are looking at this consultation and slightly kind of paling at the thought of it? Any suggestions or words of encouragement that you can offer?
Well, firstly, the consultation is still open. It closes on the 27th of May. So if people do want to respond to that, they can. I think if it does get introduced, which is not guaranteed, but if it does, then I think, again, it will lead back into a lot of the things that firms are probably already considering in light of the cultural guidance that came out in February anyway, in terms of how do we improve culture at firms, what training can we provide, how do we respond to complaints, how do we show that we are taking these issues seriously, that where a complaint is raised, it's investigated appropriately and thoroughly, and all of those things, from a regulatory perspective, would, I think, give the SRA confidence that firms are taking these issues seriously.
Hey, well, thanks so much. It's really interesting. Such an interesting potential development. Obviously, if anybody would like to understand more about the consultation and also the underlying guidance and thematic review, I know you'll be very happy to chat with firms and individuals. Okay. We love this because it's the kind of direct overlap between regulation and discipline and employment and partnership law, which is literally everything that we do. If you've got any comments or any thoughts, please do get in touch. And if you've enjoyed it, then, as they say, like and subscribe. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.